Obviously, I was proven very wrong because I predicted that my Volunteers would defeat the Bulldogs in a thrilling close game 35-31, which hugely failed because exact opposite happened since the Bulldogs played a great game and they defeated the Volunteers in a undramatic 27-13 game that they easily won without any struggle. They scored most of their points in the first half. They held the Volunteers, kept the Volunteers from scoring a touchdown for three full quarters, most of the fourth quarter. And when the Volunteers finally did score, their one touchdown in this game. There's about 4 minutes left in the fourth quarter, so it was great performance by the Bulldogs defense, along with the fact that the Bulldogs pressured Hendon Hooker 20 times in this game. They won the turnover battle. They held the Volunteers' high-scoring offense to 13 points. They also created turnovers. They won the turnover battle. Bulldogs won the turnover battle. Bennett played great. He was running for long gains. He looked like another Tom Brady because he had a high amount of time to throw. He was throwing the football long distances in the right areas, and Bulldogs had no struggle at all scoring touchdowns in this game, and also moving the football to score 2 field goals. Undeniably, they were the better team easily. Completely outplayed the Volunteers in a game that wasn't close at all. Because even though they did score first with a field goal, it wasn't any struggle for at all for Georgia to answer. Moving the football, scored a touchdown. Moving the football, scored a touchdown, if I recall right again, and then moved the football, scored a touchdown, and then again, they were moving the football late in the second quarter, and the Volunteers were able to hold them to the field goal, except that wasn't exactly a flaw, mainly because Bulldogs had a big lead, and they were still adding to that lead on a day when Bulldogs defense was going to play a great game and hold the Volunteers to 6 points for 3 full quarters. So them being held to a field goal wasn't exactly a flaw for the Bulldogs. It's a very disappointing result, and I'm not surprised the Bulldogs end up winning because they still have a great, even though they lost players, they're still a great team. They still have a great defense, as this game showed. They're still a great team. They're the defending national champions, so I'm not surprised at all that they defeated the Volunteers, and their defense played a great game, making a statement. So again, I'm not surprised they won it all. I was very disappointed that the Volunteers were only able to score 1 touchdown in this game, and along with the fact that this was a very undramatic game, since Volunteers were never able to get it down to, they were never able to get this game tied after. They weren't able to get this game tied, and they weren't able to regain the lead because the Bulldogs outplayed the Volunteers in this game, and undeniably the Bulldogs were the better team, and they showed it on the 1st November Saturday in the 2022 college football season. And even with this disappointing loss, I'm still proud to be a Volunteers football fan, because undeniably the Volunteers still have had a great season. They scored more than over 30 points in 8 games before before being held to 13 points by a great Bulldogs team in a game that they lost 27-13. They won 8. They started 8-0 before losing for the first time to a great Bulldogs team in their 9th game that they played. They are still likely to they still have a high scoring offense, and realistically they can still score more than 30 points in the remaining regular season games that they play versus Vanderbilt, Missouri, South Carolina. If not, still most likely realistically they could still achieve that 2 out of 3. And they're so yeah, I'm still proud to be a Volunteers fan, and still it's a realistic possibility that they can still win 10 games in the regular season, or also realistically 11 games in the regular season. So I'm still excited for the remaining regular season games for the 2022 Volunteers football season, and along with, I'm also still excited because even though now it's highly unlikely the Volunteers are going to win the SEC East, because it's very unlikely the Bulldogs are going to lose 2 games before the regular season ends. Volunteers are still a lot, and they're not going to play in the obviously they're not going to play in the SEC championship game, most likely, since they're not going to win the SEC. Most likely, since they're not going to win the SEC East, the Bulldogs are. Except they're still alive. Even though they're going to need a lot of help, they're still alive to actually make it to the 4 teams college football playoffs. So I'm still excited for that, to see if the Volunteers can actually get in, since realistically they can win their final 3 regular season, their last 3 regular season games, and possibly also get some help to get into the 4 teams college football playoffs, along with the fact that I did see tonight, I did see LSU defeated Alabama, so now Alabama has 2 losses, and Tennessee they only have 1 loss. Tennessee has 1 loss while Alabama has 2 losses, so it's unlikely that even though Alabama is still likely, could still possibly play in the SEC championship game, it's unlikely that they're going to be able to get ahead of Tennessee, just because the fact that Tennessee has defeated them, LSU has defeated them, so they would have to get it. It's unlikely they'd be able to get in college football playoffs even if they play in the SEC championship game and won. It's unlikely they'd be able to get into it, just because of the fact that they have those 2 losses, and there are multiple other teams that don't have 2 losses. So that has helped out the Tennessee Volunteers. They just still need more help, except that's another reason why I'm a lot less unhappy about the Bulldogs embarrassing the Volunteers in a game they won easily 27-13, because they do need help, except it's still achievable. Well, it's slim, except Volunteers still remain alive to get into the 4 teams college football playoffs. So it's going to be an exciting rest of the 2022 college football season, mainly as a Volunteers football fan.